A man found 2 frozen wolves begging to enter his house. He was shocked by what happened next. What happens next will leave you speechless. The wind clawed at Thomas Valen's coat as he mounted the cracked stone steps, his boots sinking into snow that hadn't been there an hour ago. The path to the manor was half buried, even though the storm had ended that morning. A repaired oak door rested against his shoulder, its varnish still smelling faintly of pine oil. He had planned to drop it off and leave before nightfall, but the failing light was already bleeding into the sky. Then he saw them. 3 wolves stood in the doorway of the old manor house, pale, lean, their fur glittering faintly under the last streak of sun. They didn't snarl. They didn't move, their golden eyes fixed on him with an intensity that made the hair on the back of his neck rise. Thomas froze. His breath clouded in front of him as he tightened his grip on the door. "Easy," he muttered under his breath, not sure if he was talking to the wolves or to himself. Instead of lunging, the creatures shifted aside, opening a clear path to the entrance. One tilted its head in a gesture that looked almost human. Thomas hesitated, torn between common sense screaming at him to leave and an inexplicable tug, like invisible fingers pulling him forward. He climbed the remaining steps. The porch groaned beneath his weight, the boards swollen from years of snow and rain. The manor loomed above him, its windows opaque with frost, its gables cracked like broken teeth. He pushed the heavy door inward, bracing for dust and rot. But the air inside was warm. Not just warm, comfortably lived in, carrying the faint scent of beeswax and burning wood. The floor gleamed as if it had been polished that very morning. In the distance, barely audible over the whistle of wind, music played. It was an old tune, gentle but dissonant, as though coming from a warped phonograph. Before Thomas could make sense of it, the wolves slipped past him in a blur of movement, brushing against his legs without a sound. They bounded up the staircase as though returning to their own den. "What in the world?" Thomas whispered, his voice vanishing into the high ceiling. The foyer was lined with dark portraits of unsmiling men. Their painted eyes followed him as he stepped further inside, balancing the door against a wall. His boots left wet prints on the polished floor. He glanced toward the stairs, but the wolves were gone, their paw prints already fading into nothingness as if the house swallowed them. He should leave. Every instinct told him to. Yet something about the warmth, the music, the unnatural cleanliness, rooted him in place. He drifted toward a side hallway where faint candlelight glow. In a parlor stripped of curtains, he found candles burning in a perfect circle on the floor. Wax had pooled like pale blood around each wick. The boards inside the circle were carved with names, old, deep gouges etched by a steady hand. Thomas crouched down, brushing melting snow from his coat sleeve as he traced the letters. There, among unfamiliar names, was his own, Thomas Valen. His throat tightened. He hadn't been inside this house before. No one here should have known his name. A voice behind him broke the silence. "I've been waiting for you." Thomas spun around. A man in his late 50s stood in the doorway. He was tall, lean, with silvered hair combed neatly back and eyes sharp as glass. He wore a heavy wool coat, though no snow clung to it. His gloved hands rested calmly at his sides, as though he'd been standing there for hours. "Who are you?" Thomas demanded, rising to his feet. "What is this?" The man stepped closer, his boots making no sound on the floor. "Marcus Havel," he said evenly. "This house is not what it seems, Thomas. Neither are those wolves you saw outside." "You know my name," Thomas said, unease creeping up his spine. "How?" Marcus's lips curved in something that wasn't quite a smile. "Your name has been carved here for many years. You were always meant to come." Thomas clenched his fists. "Answer me straight. What's going on here? Those wolves, why didn't they attack me?" "Because they are not wolves," Marcus replied calmly. "They are men. Cursed men, bound by an ancient pact to guard this place." His voice lowered to a near whisper. "They are afraid, Thomas. Afraid of what's inside." Thomas shook his head, taking a step back toward the foyer. "That's insane. This place is abandoned." "Is it?" Marcus gestured around at the clean floors, the warm air. "Does this look abandoned to you? The pact keeps something far worse than hunger locked within these walls. And now?" He paused, his gaze sharpening. "Now that you've crossed the threshold, the lock is weakening." Thomas felt cold despite the heat. "I don't believe you. I just came to drop off this door. That's it." "You think you can walk away," Marcus said softly. "But the house won't let you." "It never does." Thomas glared at him. "Watch me." He strode past Marcus, his boots striking hard against the floor. The front door yawned open as if mocking him. Cold wind slapped his face when he stepped outside, but something was wrong. His truck, parked at the edge of the clearing, was buried under snow so deep it looked weeks old. He had left it in clear weather not 20 minutes ago. Thomas stumbled forward, his breath quickening. The snow crunched underfoot in unnatural silence. Behind him, the door to the manor swung closed on its own. The wolves were there again, standing at the edge of the porch. Their eyes glowed faintly in the dim light, not with hunger, but with something closer to terror. One of them lowered its head, almost bowing, as though pleading for him to turn back. Thomas's chest tightened. His hands trembled despite the thick gloves. Every instinct screamed to run, yet something deeper, something he couldn't name, told him this wasn't over. This wasn't something he could walk away from, no matter how much he wanted to. The wolf's gaze didn't waver, its head still bowed, its breath rising like smoke in the frozen air. It was as though it was asking him to return inside, setting the stage for something he could not yet understand. Thomas froze when he saw his name scratched into the wood. The letters were deep, jagged, and unmistakable, as though carved by a knife in a hurry. Thomas Valen. It wasn't on the manor floor this time. It was on the door of his own workshop, in the heart of Greystag Hollow, where no one should have known about last night. His hand hovered over the rough carving, fingertips trembling. "Who did this?" he whispered, though no one was there to answer. The wind outside carried faint voices. Two men passing by slowed when they saw him standing rigid by the door. One of them, a wiry millworker named Joran, frowned. "Valen," he called. "You all right? You look like you've seen a ghost." Thomas forced a stiff nod. "Just, someone vandalized my door." The other man, older, gave a meaningful glance to his companion. "Maybe not just anyone. Your father worked up near Havel Manor once, didn't he? Before he disappeared?" Thomas's jaw clenched. That was decades ago. The two men exchanged looks and moved on, whispering as they went. Their words, about his father, about that cursed house, followed Thomas long after they were gone. By evening, Thomas's resolve had cracked. Against every instinct, he went looking for Marcus Havel. He found him in the back of an old tea-house, sitting alone at a corner table as if he had known Thomas would come. "You saw the name," Marcus said without greeting, his voice low and calm. Thomas sat opposite him, glaring. "How long has it been there?" "Since last night," Marcus replied smoothly. "The house marked you. It knows who you are." Thomas leaned forward, his voice sharp. "Start talking. No riddles this time. What's happening up there?" Marcus's expression softened, almost pitying. "In 1987, your father and I, along with 4 others, found something in the Iron Fen mine. Something that wasn't meant to be unearthed. One of our men changed, became something else. We sealed him inside the manor, binding ourselves to keep watch. 3 of us took the burden of the wolf form as guardians. The rest became jailers." "And you expect me to believe this?" Thomas asked bitterly. "You already saw them," Marcus said gently. "Did they look like animals to you? Or did they look afraid?" Thomas said nothing. Marcus leaned closer. "One of the jailers betrayed us. The chain of protection is broken. And now, Thomas, your blood is needed to repair it. The pact was forged with your father's life. Without you, the seal will fail." Thomas pushed back his chair. "This is madness." "Madness doesn't carve your name into wood," Marcus said coldly. "Madness doesn't bury your truck in snow overnight. Come back with me to the manor. I'll show you." Despite every warning bell in his head, Thomas agreed. The answers lay in that house, and if his father truly had been part of this, he needed to know. The manor loomed darker than before, its windows faintly glowing from within as if the walls themselves held firelight. Marcus unlocked the heavy door with a brass key. Inside, the warmth was even stronger, the faint music still playing as though it had never stopped. Thomas followed Marcus to the main hall. A low growl rumbled above them. The wolves were back, pacing along the upper balcony. Their eyes burned gold in the dim light. "This is what remains of Elias Corrin, Lyle Thatch, and Rowan Darren," Marcus said. "Good men once. They chose to be guardians, but the bond twisted them." As if to answer, one of the wolves leapt down from the balcony, landing with a heavy thud. Its body shuddered violently. Bones cracked, fur receded, and the shape of a man emerged from the shifting mass. Thomas stepped back, horrified, as the creature transformed into a gaunt man with pale skin, wearing only tattered remnants of cloth. His eyes were wild with pain. "Thomas Valen," the man rasped, voice raw. "I'm Elias Corrin. Don't listen to him. He'll use you. He wants your blood to finish what he started." Marcus's jaw tightened. "Stay back, Elias." But Elias staggered forward, clutching Thomas's sleeve. "The seal doesn't keep a monster in. It keeps us out. He bound us here, trapped us in these forms. He wants immortality. You're his key." Thomas yanked his arm free. "What are you talking about?" "Both of you, stop." Elias's voice cracked. "Before the next moonrise, choose. Help us break the pact, or he'll kill you to complete it." Marcus advanced, his face hardening. "He lies." His mind is gone. The curse drove him mad. Do not believe a word he says. The tension between them was unbearable. Thomas, breathing hard, stepped back toward the stairs. "I need to see for myself. I'm not taking either of your words." While Marcus tried to corral Elias, Thomas slipped away. He moved through shadowed corridors, climbing to the attic where the air was thick with dust. The floorboards groaned as he pushed aside old trunks and crates. There, buried beneath broken furniture, he found it. A leather-bound journal with his father's name pressed into the cover. Pages brittle with age described the 1987 ritual in painstaking detail. Thomas read by the thin beam of his flashlight, heart pounding. His father wrote of 7 men, a pact, and a trap built not just to contain the changed man but to control him. In the margins were angry notes. Marcus altered the rite. He walks free while the others suffer. Thunder rolled outside, though no storm had been forecast. The house shuddered faintly. Thomas felt a presence in the attic, as though someone, or something, was reading over his shoulder. He closed the journal, tucking it inside his coat. On his way down, he stopped at a window and saw faint symbols glowing in the glass, runes he didn't recognize, pulsing with pale light. When he glanced back at the wolves pacing outside, he saw the same marks etched as scars across their bodies. A sick realization hit him. The manor wasn't just holding them, it was feeding on them. As Thomas descended into the hall again, Marcus called up to him, voice smooth and commanding. "Have you seen enough to understand now?" "You're running out of time." Elias's hoarse whisper carried from the shadows. "No, Thomas. Don't trust him. Trust the scars." Thomas stood frozen between them, his father's journal heavy in his coat, his heart pounding with a truth he could no longer ignore. As the night deepened, he noticed symbols on the windows glowing faintly, symbols that matched scars on the wolves' bodies, foreshadowing that the house itself is alive and feeding on them all. The third night was a storm. Rain lashed against the windows of Blackthorn Manor as if the heavens themselves were trying to break inside. Wind howled through the cracked shutters, bending the trees on the hill until they looked like twisted claws grasping for the roof. Lightning flared across the sky, throwing the carved pillars and high windows into stark relief. The manor's front doors groaned on their hinges as Marcus Blackthorn threw them open, letting the storm sweep into the hall. "Stand in the circle, Thomas," Marcus barked, his voice rising over the thunder. He pointed to the glowing sigils carved into the floor, the same circle Thomas had seen faintly etched in the wood the night before. "Do it now. The pact must be renewed before dawn. I'll free them afterward. I swear it." Thomas felt the floor hum under his boots, as if the house itself was alive. The 3 wolves crouched in the shadows at the far end of the hall, their eyes glowing pale in the flashes of lightning. They looked more human than beast tonight, as if the storm itself was burning away part of the curse. Elias, the largest of the wolves, limped forward, his voice breaking through the rising wind. "Don't step inside that circle, Thomas," Elias growled, his words rough but clear. "Destroy it. That pact doesn't protect the world. It enslaves us to him." He shot a glare at Marcus, his lips peeling back from his teeth. "We're not his soldiers. We're his prisoners." Marcus's dark coat whipped around him as he stepped closer, face illuminated by a jagged crack of lightning. His eyes burned with a strange light. "Lies. They're trying to twist you against me. They want to see the world burn, and I'm the only one keeping it from happening." But Thomas was no longer sure whom to believe. His breath quickened, and the bitter taste of fear filled his mouth. In the corner of his vision, he saw the walls shudder as if breathing. "What's really inside this house, Marcus?" Thomas demanded, his voice hoarse. Marcus smirked, but his expression cracked for an instant. "Something older than you can understand. Something I control." "No," Elias said, his voice steady now, despite the tremor in his legs. "Not something. Someone. Your father." The words struck Thomas harder than the thunder rattling the glass. His father. He had been told his father vanished in these woods years ago, lost during a hunt. He had never believed it, but he had never imagined this. "You're lying," Thomas said, though his own voice sounded thin, uncertain. Marcus's smile vanished, replaced by a snarl of rage. "He's no longer your father. He's mine now. The ritual made him part of this house, its heart and blood. And you—" He jabbed a finger toward Thomas, the veins in his neck bulging. "You were lured here because the circle feeds on life. Every uninvited soul makes me stronger." The wolves growled in unison, the sound low and murderous. Lightning shattered the darkness, and the sigils on the floor glowed brighter, pulsing like veins of fire. Thomas felt his legs shake, but not from fear. He was angry now, angry at Marcus, angry at the lies, angry at himself for not seeing the truth sooner. "If that's my father in there, then I'm not letting you use him," Thomas said through clenched teeth. Marcus lunged forward, grabbing Thomas by the arm and shoving him toward the circle, but Thomas twisted free and dropped to one knee, pulling a crowbar from inside his coat. He had hidden it there earlier, suspecting he'd need it. With a grunt, he jammed the iron tip under the carved floorboards and pried upward. The wood split with a sharp crack, and the circle's glow flickered. "No!" Marcus roared, but before he could stop him, Thomas ripped up another board, breaking the carved runes. A deep moan rolled through the manor as if the house itself was in pain. The sigils flared and then died, plunging the hall into darkness, save for the lightning flashes outside. The wolves leapt forward, their strength suddenly restored. Elias's form blurred between man and beast as he slammed into Marcus, driving him back against the wall. The other two wolves tore at Marcus's arms and coat, but Marcus fought like a demon, pulling a hidden blade from his belt. The blade shimmered with the same glowing runes that had burned on the floor. With a furious swing, Marcus drove it into Elias's side. Elias gasped, blood staining his fur as he collapsed. "Thomas!" he choked, his eyes desperate. "Basement! The heart! Cut it down!" Thomas hesitated, looking from Elias to Marcus locked in battle with the other wolves. The decision was clear. He sprinted down the hall as Marcus shouted after him, "You'll die down there! The house will eat you alive!" The staircase to the basement was narrow and steep, lit only by the pale flicker of lightning through cracks in the walls. The air smelled of damp earth and something far worse, something rotting and alive. Thomas grabbed an axe from the wall at the stairs' base, its blade rusted but sharp enough. The basement floor throbbed under his boots like a heartbeat. Roots as thick as his arms pulsed along the walls, glowing faintly. At the center of the room was a massive knot of wood and flesh, fused together, rising like a black tree trunk. Thomas swung the axe hard. The first strike barely chipped the surface, but he didn't stop. He hacked again and again, splinters flying, sap-like blood spraying his arms. Above, he heard a crash and Marcus's furious roar. The wolves were buying him time. Thomas planted his feet and swung harder, driving the blade deep into the roots. The glow faltered. A voice whispered through the walls, his father's voice. "Thomas, end this. Free me." His chest burned with exhaustion, but he struck again. The knot split with a horrible scream, not from his throat but from the house itself. Light burst out of the wound, searing and white. The floor shook violently. Upstairs, Marcus screamed as the light poured through the manor, the power he had hoarded turning against him. His body blackened and cracked like burning wood, then collapsed to ash. The wolves howled in pain as their cursed forms twisted, then broke apart, not into death, but into life. They fell to the floor fully human, gasping, freed. The storm outside died instantly, as if someone had cut a wire. Rain slowed to a drizzle, then stopped. Thomas staggered up the stairs, smoke still curling from the walls. The manor looked old and dead now, its symbols gone, its power broken. Elias lay in the doorway, pale but alive, his wound bound by one of the other men. "Help me get them outside," Thomas said, his voice hoarse. Together, they dragged the weak but breathing man into the dawn light. The house loomed silent behind them, its windows shattered, its shutters hanging loose. It no longer glowed, no longer breathed. Thomas stared at the lifeless building, chest heaving, as the first rays of sun broke over the hills. The wolves, now men, collapsed beside him, shaking and exhausted. They were free. Marcus was gone. The house was silent. And as Thomas caught his breath, he realized the battle was over. But the war might not be. The storm ends abruptly. The wolves collapse, breathing hard, but alive, now fully human again. Thomas drags them outside as dawn breaks over a silent house, which now looks old and lifeless, its windows shattered and symbols gone. Snow hammered the roof of the cabin as Thomas pushed through the door, boots dripping from the long trek back from Greystag Hollow. The wind carried a sharp edge tonight, colder than any storm he'd felt in years, and his breath hung in the air even inside the workshop. He set his satchel on the bench, meaning only to stow his tools, when something caught his eye. A faint glow, pulsing through the crack of the old oak table like the beat of a buried heart. Thomas froze. The fragment of floorboard lay where he had left it weeks ago, a broken piece of Blackthorn Manor that should have been dead. But now it was warm to the touch. He ran his fingertips over its charred grain, and letters shimmered through the blackened wood. It was writing, his father's hand, unmistakable, though trembling, as if carved in desperation. The pact is broken, but the hunger remains. Thomas's jaw tightened. His father had been consumed by that cursed house, torn from life by Marcus's greed. If this message was real, it meant that whatever power fed on Marcus hadn't died with him. It had moved on. The door creaked open, and Elias stepped inside, shoulders hunched against the cold. Though free of his wolf's curse, he still bore the pallor of those long years. A deep scar traced his ribs where Marcus's rune blade had struck him. He glanced at the table, saw the glow, and stiffened. "What is that?" Elias asked, his voice low, cautious. "Proof," Thomas replied grimly, holding the fragment up to the lantern light. "The thing inside the manor didn't end when Marcus burned. It's still out there." Elias's eyes narrowed. "Then we need to leave this place. If it's hunting you—" "No." Thomas's voice cut sharp, harder than he intended. He set the wood down and reached for his father's journal, flipping through pages filled with runes and strange symbols. "Running won't stop it. Whatever it is, it's hungry. It won't stop until it finds something, or someone else to feed on." Elias sank into the chair by the stove, rubbing his temple. "The others won't like this." They wanted to believe it was over. "They don't have to like it," Thomas said, tracing his finger over the warding runes in the journal. "They just have to be ready." The next day, Thomas began carving sigils into the beams of the workshop. His hands, steady as they were when shaping furniture, now worked with a new precision born of fear. Each line burned faintly when completed, proof that the runes were taking hold. Elias watched in silence, then joined him, helping mix the chalk and iron powder to strengthen the markings. But peace was a fragile thing. By the week's end, strangers in dark coats arrived in Greystag Hollow, claiming to be surveyors sent to inspect damage from the storm. Thomas overheard them in the tavern, speaking in clipped tones, asking about Marcus and a sealed door under the manor. The villagers, believing the house had collapsed from snow and neglect, shrugged off the questions. But Thomas knew better. That night, returning from the village with supplies, Thomas found Elias's younger brother waiting at the cabin. Lucian bore the same sharp features as Elias, but with a harder edge, a man who had spent too many years hunting things in dark places. His boots were caked in frozen mud from the northern roads, and his face was drawn tight with worry. "There have been disappearances," Lucien said without greeting, dropping his pack on the table. "Miners, trappers, men who know these mountains. They vanished near the old tunnels above Grapine Ridge, the same tunnels Marcus marked in his journal." Thomas looked from Lucien to Elias, seeing the fear in both men's eyes. "Then it's spreading," Thomas said. "This isn't just about the manor anymore." Lucien leaned closer. "You think that thing's moving underground?" "I think it's looking for a way out," Thomas replied, his voice flat. "Marcus wanted to control it. Now it's free." The days that followed were spent in preparation. Thomas turned the cabin into a fortress, lining the windows with iron filings, hanging charms of bone and ash, and painting protective circles on the floor. The other men, freed from their wolf's curse, swore to stay close. By night, they patrolled the edge of the forest, watching for any sign of movement. By day, Thomas studied the runes his father left, learning how to trace barriers, how to trap a spirit, how to mark a path so it couldn't be followed. Elias caught him late one night, bent over the journal, eyes burning with exhaustion. "You're changing," Elias said quietly. "You're not just building defenses, you're planning to go after it." Thomas didn't look up. "If we sit here and wait, it'll come to us." "I'm not giving it that chance. You're a carpenter, Thomas. Not a hunter. Not a sorcerer." Thomas finally raised his gaze, meeting Elias's. "I wasn't a fighter when Marcus dragged me into that house either. But I learned the first snow of winter fell heavy, cloaking the woods in white silence. But at night, when the wind cut sharp through the pines, faint howls echoed from the mountains, neither wolf nor man. Each sound sent a chill down Thomas's spine. He tightened his grip on the axe he had used to split the manor's heart and sharpened it by lantern light until its edge gleamed like silver. The strangers in dark coats still roamed the village, still asking questions. The men kept their distance, watching, waiting, knowing these visitors were hunting something they didn't understand. One evening, Thomas stood in the doorway of his workshop, looking toward the frozen woods. Snowflakes swirled like ash in the moonlight. The cabin behind him glowed faintly with the protective wards carved into its beams. Lucien and Elias sat near the fire, whispering about what lay in the tunnels. Thomas's breath curled in the icy air as he rested the axe across his shoulder. He no longer doubted what he had seen in Blackthorn Manor. He no longer doubted why the wolves had begged him to enter that cursed circle. They hadn't been trying to trap him. They'd been trying to stop something worse from breaking free. The house was dead. Marcus was ash. But the hunger was still out there, and Thomas would not wait for it to come to him. As snow falls again and howls echo faintly from the mountains, Thomas sharpens his axe and looks toward the frozen woods, no longer doubting what he saw. The wolves had begged him to enter that night to stop a great evil, And though the house is silent now, Thomas knows the real fight is only beginning. Disclaimer: the story you just watched is fictional. It explores powerful themes of unexpected kindness, animal intelligence, and the deep emotional bonds that can form between humans and nature. This narrative aims to inspire empathy and a deeper appreciation for the extraordinary connections that can be found in the most unlikely of places.